What is going on, good listener? Welcome inside another edition of the Tall Can Audio Podcast. Matt Robinson with you, as always. Just me here today, as on the Sunday, where we typically record this. Rob was unavailable, had other things going on. We'll keep this one short, as I, too, have some things to do a little later this afternoon, being Mother's Day. So we'll go and do the family thing here instead of the sit in the studio and drink beer thing. I can tell you, though, that on Tuesday afternoon, our friend Steve Bunda will be back on the podcast. We'll do it remotely this time. And, we'll see what's in the news by then and dive into it. No doubt there'll be a lot more hockey. Probably he'll have some early returns on Ottawa Red Blacks training camp and some more news from around the CFL. We'll see what's going on around the Blue Jays by then. But just a couple of quick things before I head out today that will just kind of hit in a surface way. And honestly, perhaps more than anything else, perhaps more than they are newsy, they're just things on my chest, right? There's just some things that I want to vent about. I want to talk about the PWHL here in a couple of minutes and the expansion process and the way people are reacting to that. I want to talk to you about kind of this weird directionless team that Hockey Canada has sent to the World Hockey Championships over in Switzerland. It's not really a team built with the future in mind. It's not really a team built with guys that are trying to prove themselves ahead of a 2028 World Cup. It's just kind of some guys. We'll get into that all in a few minutes, but can we start with this break that the National Hockey League has allowed themselves to fall into now? On Saturday night, most of you would have seen that the Carolina Hurricanes finished their sweep of the Philadelphia Flyers. That means they have won 8 in a row to begin the playoffs, and they are now staring down a very real possibility of an 11 or 12 even day break here. Now, sometimes between rounds, you see 7 days. I can recall even seeing 10. Now, that's usually just before the Cup final. If a conference final in either the East or the West ends in a sweep and the other one goes 7, and even if it doesn't, sometimes you see these really long breaks of 8 or 9 days, and it's because the Stanley Cup dates are locked in, right? Before we even see how long the playoffs are going to take. That's major network TV stuff. That's major advertiser stuff. You have sponsors coming to the games. You got, the draft prospects that you always see, the top 5, top 10, whatever it is, guys likely to go in the draft that year get invited to one of the games. So all of this stuff is booked far in advance, and we kind of have a rough idea of when we expect the conference finals to end, and so we just kind of lock in the Stanley Cup final. It doesn't really play out that way throughout the first few rounds. You don't normally see an almost 2-week break, and in some ways, it's unavoidable. Like, you always have the possibility out in front of you that one series is going to be a sweep and the other could go 7. And there's just nothing you can do about that. But the NHL made this one so much worse for itself than it had to, and it's all for one reason. And you're not going to be shocked at all by that reason. And I know a lot of you are thinking money. And it's money adjacent. But it's TV. It's always TV. It's network TV. And if you take yourself back 8 or 9 days to last weekend, not Mother's Day weekend. I know you were all thinking of your moms and not of watching sporting events. You would never do that. Look, we had a Sunday that was shaping up for the potential of 3 Game 7s. And I don't even remember now what it was all going to be. I don't think it was Philly, Pittsburgh, which of course didn't get there, but only one of them did get there. I know it was obviously Montreal and Tampa, because that one happened. And then was it the potential of Dallas, Minnesota, and Edmonton, Anaheim? Had they gone there? It doesn't really matter, but there was a possibility of there being 3 Game 7s on Sunday, but the NHL had nothing on the Saturday because the series that were scheduled to be on that day had already finished up. And look, as Canadians, we get in a little bit of a huff if there's no Saturday night hockey, but that had very little to do with what ended up happening. It's that down in the States, they had been given an ABC window. And without getting into all of the details of this, ESPN, who is one of the rights holders in the United States, is owned by Disney, and Disney also owns ABC. And so you see these games occasionally, big games throughout the regular season. There's a few on weekends. Certainly big playoff games, if they have a window for it, they'll put on ABC because it's a much larger audience. You don't have to have ESPN or TNT. It's the same reason that up here, everyone, when it's hard to find your team's game on a Saturday night, goes, it should just be on CBC for everybody. And like, that would be great, but it's not possible. And Sportsnet didn't spend all that money to get the rights to the NHL so that you could easily watch for free on CBC. They want you to have their channel, right? But one game at 7 o'clock on Saturday night will end up on CBC. It's usually Toronto unless they're shit, in which case maybe it's Montreal or, you know, however the schedule shakes loose that week. But everyone wants to be on CBC because it's easy. Well, the NHL, for the same reason, wants to be on a CBC or down there, an NBC, ABC, CBS, or Fox. One of those network channels over the air that even if you have cable, you don't have to have special cable channels to get. And they had been gifted an 8 p.m. Saturday night window on ABC, and they had no games. The first round wasn't over yet, and all the games left to finish that round one, those 3 Game 7s I referenced, would fall on Sunday. And so they decided to do that thing that lots of people have talked about. It drives me crazy. I was going to say I don't know why. I do know why, and we're staring it down right now. But they said, well, we would rather not piss away an opportunity to be on ABC in prime time on Saturday night. So what harm could it do? We will start the Carolina-Philadelphia series a night before we finish round 1. And then everything else kind of ended up wrapping up too. And so now on Sunday, not only do they play the Game 7 of Tampa and Montreal, they also have a Game 1 after that one. So that's a weird day as well. But then there's this break, right? You can't have Montreal playing like the next night after winning a Game 7. So they get 2 days off, and their series is going to start on Wednesday. So now you have Carolina and Philly play Game 1 on Saturday for the sake of television, Game 2 on Monday, just so that they can get on their normal 2 days on, 2 days off, unless there's travel in between schedule. And they have played 2 games 2 days before Montreal or Buffalo, one of the 2 teams that they're playing, have even played 1. Now, they couldn't have predicted that, well, I shouldn't say that. I was going to say they couldn't have predicted that Carolina-Philly would be a sweep. Once you saw the teams, you probably could have predicted that. But when you were drawing up your schedules ahead of time and how these brackets were all going to shake loose, you couldn't have predicted a sweep. But Montreal and Buffalo finally get going on Wednesday. Carolina wins again on Thursday to get up 3-0, and they win again on Saturday to sweep the series. They're done, while Buffalo and Montreal have only played 2 games, and they are tied at 1. So this thing is going at least 5. I think most people look at the matchup and say it's probably going to be longer than that. And the fucking Hurricanes have time to take a Caribbean cruise if they want to before they get back to practice and get ready for another series. Now, I'm not sure I would take a cruise right now. There's some stuff going on, some stuff we're all trying not to think about, some instant replays we're all pretending don't really exist, we aren't going to see again. Like, going on a cruise right now could really come back to haunt us. I'm so sorry for that. It's just terrible. And now, anyway, you have people going, well, what difference does it make and who cares? Well, the Hurricanes care. A break is a good idea. One of the things that people have always said about the Hurricanes is that their style in the playoffs requires a ton of energy, and that's why they never make it past the conference final. They have worn themselves out by the time they get there. So I'm sure they're not against a break. But like 5 or 6 days would have been plenty. Not more than double that. So they're going to be pissed. let's say Buffalo and Montreal go 7, the league isn't going to want to make Carolina wait any longer than they have to, knowing how long they've been sitting around and all the sponsors down there for that team and everything that goes into that. So whoever wins that is going to get into a very quick turnaround, probably, 1 day off and back at it the next. And that's fine. That happens. Like, that's your punishment for not finishing a team off earlier than 7. But this is going to be so exaggerated and so unnecessary. You've also now, for the sake of their fans and, the rest of the hockey world who likes watching games every night, big important playoff games, you've got one of your series already done and out. Like, there's going to be empty time slots here all over the place. And it was all for the sake of US TV. And you didn't have to do it. Like, to me, it's stupid to start a new round before the previous one is finished. Like, I can't even believe that's a debate. And there are reputable people out. Well, it's up to you how reputable they are. But there are reporters and media members going, it's not that big of a deal. It's just the way it plays out sometimes. Well, sometimes these breaks happen, like I said, organically, based on length of series. This is another self-inflicted wound by the league. You felt you needed to start early to grab that American TV window. And now how many American TV windows are you flushing away because you can't use any of them for 11 days here? It's just dumb. You're going to have competitive imbalance. You're going to have fatigue imbalance. I don't know where you stand on the rest versus rust thing for different teams. We are about to put that to the test in a pretty big way. Like, they're essentially taking an Olympic break here in between the second and third round. I don't know. Freddie Anderson hasn't given up more than 2 goals in any of his starts yet in the playoffs. You want to give that guy 2 weeks off and hope he shows up in that groove again? Or would you rather just get him back in there and stopping pucks and let him ride the ride of a lifetime? You heard me, ride the ride of a lifetime. That's a thing. It's just silly that they have allowed this to become a thing, and it's silly to pretend that this is a normal thing. Other leagues never find themselves in this situation. This is a uniquely NHL thing, begging to be loved by big American networks, forcing themselves into a situation that blew up in their face, fairly predictably. So I don't know why we have to pretend it's not a big... Like I said, if you don't care about this type of thing and the business side of it and all, like everything that goes into it, that's fair. But to pretend that it's normal, to pretend that this is the way, reasonable sports leagues operate. Like, think we all were following the Jays all the way to the World Series last fall. Can you imagine if they were playing the Seattle Mariners in the ALCS and the Dodgers just took a week and a half off and waited for you? Like, if you finish up a day or two early and get to set your rotation the way you want, good on you. Like, that's the way it should work. But for you to have time to play like an entire 5 games, and this is worse because obviously in baseball you play every day, so the gaps don't get quite as big. But like, Montreal's going to have time to play Buffalo 5 times, potentially. 5 more games before Carolina sees the ice again. I don't know why it bugs me so much, other than the fact it makes you look dumb. And it makes you look dumb because you did do something dumb. You're not looking dumb unfairly. You set yourself up for this. It went exactly the wrong way, and here you are. Anyway, so one of the things that I often find interesting around this time of year is the roster that gets put together for the World Hockey Championships, right? And the way that it's interesting, at least to me, is in the time frame that it's happening, right? Like a year ago, ahead of the Olympic Games, coming out of the Four Nations Cup, we could have a conversation about which of these guys didn't get selected to Four Nations and is desperate to get on that radar for the Olympics. And, that's why they've showed up at times where in other years they haven't. There was lots of talk going into the Four Nations that one of the main reasons Nick Suzuki hadn't been selected for that tournament, while he would end up selected for the Olympics, was that he hadn't shown up often enough for Team Canada at the World Hockey Championships and other opportunities like that. And look, Montreal at the time hadn't been particularly competitive, and so he had some free springs where he could have showed up. And we never totally know family situations, people are pregnant, people are ill, whatever might be happening there. We never know all the details on injury situations. When you finish the regular season, your ankle was shitty enough that I don't really want to fly overseas and play any more hockey, but it was fine enough to finish. There's always extra details we're not super familiar of, but you do still kind of drive down on or drill down on, all right, who's here, who's not here, and why are they here? And so going into an Olympic year, we saw last year, right? Sidney Crosby and pals. Macklin Celebrini, and, there was a bunch of high-end guys. Once Sid goes, yeah, I'm going, it makes it really hard for anybody else to say, yeah, I'm not. Like, well, if Sid's going, why aren't you, right? And so that was an interesting discussion. We had that. Connor Bedard opts out while Macklin Celebrini goes and plays alongside with Sid and some of his buddies. And you wonder, I guess it didn't end up mattering because Connor Bedard got hurt midway through the season, but it was on people's mind. Like, oh, yeah, a lot of the other guys are going. Why aren't you going? Anyway, this past week, Hockey Canada put out their roster for this year's World Hockey Championships. And I'd be curious, good listener, to pick your brain on what type of roster this is. Is this just a post-Olympic, nobody's really got to worry too hard? Guys who want to go will go. Guys who don't really feel like it can get away with it. It's just not really one of those ones that we're keeping an eye on. Even though we've seen that bite Nick Suzuki, allegedly, on the ass before. Like, Hockey Canada doesn't just want to see you show up when it serves you and you want to put yourself on the map or put yourself on their radar. They want to know who shows up when it's maybe not quite as advantageous or quite as beneficial. So I'm looking at this roster, and I don't know if this is a group of guys who feel like, fuck you, they left me off the Olympic team, I'd better go, right? I'd better show up this year and start to get back on their radar. Is this a bunch of guys, because there's some older guys here who, let's be real, have no real chance of being on that 2028 World Cup team. Certainly not on a 2030 Olympic team. You'll see some of these names. You won't need me to read them to you to know which guys these are. But they just want to keep playing, right? They love the game. Their season ended in early April, and they were able to take a month off and then head overseas. Let's kind of go through this a little bit, and we're not going to go name by name. We're not going to drill down on all of these, but allow me to hit you with some names here. These are just in the order in which they are presented on the TSN graphic that I'm looking at right now. These are not lines. These are not priority. These are nothing like that. These are just the names on the list. Starting up front, you have Matthew Barzal, Connor Brown, Macklin Celebrini, Dylan Cousins. Emmett Finney is an interesting name who got himself on the radar a little bit here in Detroit over the course of the last season. Dylan Holloway has a nice new contract out of St. Louis. Sorry about that, Edmonton. Fraser Minton, Ryan O'Reilly, Mark Scheifele, John Tavares, Robert Thomas. He's smooth. Oh, he's a hot one. I'm sorry for that. I'm sorry to anyone who understood that reference. I'm sorry to anyone who didn't. It was not necessary. And Gabriel Velarde up front. On defense, Evan Bouchard, Dylan DeMello, Sam Dickinson, Denton Matejchuk, Darnell Nurse, Morgan Riley, Zach Whitecloud, and Parker Weatherspoon. And then in net, it's interesting Jet Greaves, Jack Ivankovic, and Cam Talbot. And so I look at that roster and we can, I don't know. I'm curious, like I said, I'm curious to hear what you guys think of this, because I look at this and I go, all right, does anyone really think at the 2028 World Cup or the 2030 Olympic Games that John Tavares or Zach Whitecloud, and I guess these are two different caliber or quality players, Tavares will have aged out at one point. He was clearly an Olympic caliber player. He isn't now. Zach Whitecloud, it's not an age thing. That's just not you. But like Ryan O'Reilly, similar boat. Morgan Riley, similar boat. Whether it's talent or age, like you're not going to be a part of this thing anymore. You know, is it a young and up-and-coming group? These are all guys who want badly to be considered for 2028 or 2030 that just need that veteran presence around them, and that's why your O'Reillys and your Tavareses and your Morgan Rileys are there. I don't really see that either. Like, there are certainly those pieces there. Macklin Celebrini is awesome, right? But we already know Macklin Celebrini will be there the next pile of times that Team Canada goes anywhere. Evan Bouchard is interesting. I've grown incredibly weary already of the discussions because it's snark. Like, why does no one know how to frame a tweet or an argument anymore that just says, I think it's wrong that Evan Bouchard was left off of the Norris ballot this year, and he has these numbers, and he has 95 points, and only these many guys. Instead, it's always, oh, I guess the East isn't watching. Of course it would be the Oilers, but okay, fuck off. Done. Don't care how interesting or legitimate your argument is anymore. If it leads with snark, I'm out. Because it usually means you've got no real great way to... Anyway, this we're not going to do this. I started it because there's no one else here. I am not going to get into a whole thing tonight on the framing of the argument. Evan Bouchard clearly fits into hey, I would like you to notice me in 2028, and that's fair. He is on that list. I don't know if he makes it or not. I don't know if he ever wins a Norris Trophy. He will be in the conversation in 2028 and 2030. That's legit. That's a good pick to put on a World Championship roster. Denton Mateychuk is a young guy who I like a lot. Parker Weatherspoon had a really nice year, kind of out of nowhere. That was a guy I really wanted last summer for the Leafs to go after. Just as let's take a flyer here and see if there's anything there. And look, he's not a top pair guy on a contender, but he's a capable guy. So that's fine. Up front, you go back, you look, is Ryan O'Reilly and John Tavares going to be there? No. Could Rob Thomas be there? Yeah. And I promise I won't do the song thing again. I apologized for that already. But he could be there as a hot one at the World Cup or the Olympics. I'm sorry I couldn't help myself. Like, there are pieces out here. Connor Brown isn't going anywhere. I don't really think Matthew Barzal is still in anyone's realistic picture of a long-term Team Canada contributor. He was on their long list this year, no doubt. But, you know, I don't think that's a guy we're really looking at to be a Team Canada contributor. Dylan Cousins, a capable guy, same thing. That's not an Olympics guy. That's not a World Cup guy. You know, Dylan Holloway, probably not, but good for you. Fraser Minton, probably not, but good for you. You know, you're a young guy who can get some experience here, but probably just to be a leader on a future World Championship team. But Mark Scheifele is the one name that I haven't really drilled down on here. And he was in that conversation for the Olympics this year, right to the very, and again, reemerged when Braden Point got hurt. And you started to talk about, okay, what kind of guy should replace Braden Point? You know, we'd already seen, okay, Sam Bennett's going to get added back into the mix. Seth Jarvis gets added back into the mix. And I don't I don't love Mark Scheifele as a player. I don't trust him in his defensive zone. And people out of Winnipeg will tell you his defense has gotten better and better, and he's a better two-way player than I give him credit for. And you know what? There might be something to that. It takes a long time. It's like turning a warship, right, to get people's perspective to change on these guys. But I kind of think if Mark Scheifele didn't make it, when multiple guys got hurt ahead of these Olympics and they still didn't choose him, I have a really hard time believing that they're going to choose him in 2028 at the World Cup or in 2030, barring something ridiculous, right? Where he's having a 58 goal, paced out season or something like that. So look, maybe there's nothing to this. And I think the further that I keep going through these names, that's being drawn out. Down the road, could Sam Dickinson be a Team Canada defenseman? Sure. Could Robert Thomas make a Team Canada? I guess. But there's a lot of guys here where it's just sort of like Dylan DeMello, no, it's not happening. Morgan Riley, no, it's not happening. It really feels like this is just a throw together. Who wants to go? Who wants to do it this year? Team. Which is a little disappointing. I really like kind of and maybe it's just because I'm a nerd for this shit, but I'd like to read something into your roster construction. That this year we went as young as we possibly could with guys who might have a chance come 2030. That's not this roster. I would like to see a roster of guys then who are all pushing hard. They're in their prime, who all badly want to be on that 2028 World Cup roster. It's not that. This kind of feels like one of those just lost years where it's slapped together, guys who were eliminated early feel like playing a little more hockey, and just traveling. There's no rhyme or reason to it. Doesn't mean it won't be fun. Doesn't mean it's not an important job. This is a very important job, not just because Team Canada always wants to win the World Hockey Championships, but because Matthew Tkachuk is traveling with Team USA this year. And he wants to become a member of the Triple Gold Club, a Stanley Cup champion, an Olympic gold medalist, and a World Hockey champion. And I can't have it. I can't allow that. I'm sorry, Denton Mateychuk. I'm sorry, Connor Brown. You are charged with a very important job right now. This is not a hockey vacation. I need you and Evan Bouchard and Morgan Riley and Dylan Holloway to shut that down. I'm not allowing Matthew Tkachuk. Well, I might be. I really have very little say in it. I cannot allow you to allow Matthew Tkachuk to have any more glory, to have any more success. Fuck that guy. And it's on you to get that done. It's on you to go fuck that guy. I'm sorry, it's an ugly job, but somebody's got to do it. Did I mention the goalies here? I did, yeah. Again, it's a question of development or like Cam Talbot and Jet Greaves are your guys, and that's fine. That's a world championship tandem for Hockey Canada. But I like that they're taking Jack Ivankovic. That guy's got a future, wasn't blessed at the World Juniors to have the best Team Canadas in front of him that we have seen at previous World Hockey Championships. Not the best coaching, not the best systems, not the best rosters. So I like when they take to me, that is a development move. We talked about that ahead of the Olympics, right? You're going to take two guys, whatever, whether it be Binnington, whether it be Darcy Kemper, have those be your two guys, and then take a young guy because look, if you're at an Olympic Games and you're playing your third goaltender, things are off the fucking rails anyway. Take somebody with you, take a kid, let him get the experience, let him breathe it all in so that when he goes, maybe it's a little less daunting, little fewer nerves, those sorts of things. So look, is this exactly that? No. But if you're taking a third goaltender to the World Hockey Championships, Jack Ivankovic is as good of a selection as anybody. Beyond that, Cam Talbot is never going to factor in for Hockey Canada in any serious competition. I doubt Jet Greaves will, but I also 3 or 4 or 5 years ago would have doubted that Logan Thompson ever would, and we got there. So, fair enough. He's earned a shot there. Look, I get it. When you do a topic like this, there are some of you out there who quite a while ago were rolling your eyes at me. Are you seriously breaking down the World Hockey Championship roster and what kind of message we're trying to send? Yeah, I am. Because I want to look for a direction. And Hockey Canada badly needs a direction. Was this all guys in their prime who might be on a bubble of a World Cup team? Nope. Was this all young guys who might in 2030, 2032 be ready for major competitions? Nope. I wanted to see something. We didn't see anything. And sometimes it's just like that. Like I said, some years are just like that. And this clearly is just one of those years where they threw a wide umbrella out there and said, sure, John Tavares, why don't you come over, wear the C again if you want, and, have some fun in Europe in May. And it's not the end of the world. Like, I appreciate that for these guys. And there's every chance these guys will go and win the tournament. That's on the table. It just doesn't really show a clear direction for Hockey Canada. And that's all I was looking for here. Can we talk a second about PWHL expansion? Which is great to see. To an extent. Look, we've talked about this before. I think 4 teams this year is... That's too much. I thought 2 teams last year was too much, and now we're doing it again. They have made radical adjustments to the selection process and the expansion draft process. And I have to give them credit for that. It's incredibly convoluted. We're not going to dive into all of it here today. I'm not sure we ever will. Like, I'm not sure that I will ever have it in me to look at all of these rules, all these exceptions, the 4 different rounds, and be able to lay this out for you properly. It's a spreadsheet. It's an Excel document. I'm more annoyed, as I often am, with the way the process is being received. And look, like I said, I think 4 teams for a league this young with a talent pool where it is too many. But they clearly have their hearts set on getting into as many markets as they can, as quickly as they can. And I don't know if they'll do this again next year with another 2 or whatever else. But this is going to take us to 12 teams. And look, it's, I guess in that regard, like if you can get there, I don't know what it is, 12 teams, 16 teams, and we are just going to power through the criticism. We are going to power through the talent train and just get there and hope that everyone else forgets in 10 years or 20 years what that did to the original fan bases. Because it's tough right now. If you were an original season ticket holder in year 1, and you bought jerseys even though they were weird and they were just diagonal team names and whatever, but you put your favorite player's name on it, and they were drafted in year 1, or they survived the draft after, but got drafted this time, it's tough on fans. It really is. And those original fan bases that floated you at the beginning are being asked to take another blow. And so I do think the strategy here seems to be, yeah, those are our most hardcore. They were here on day 1. They will support us. They'll understand. And in a couple of years, when we're at 16 teams, 20 teams, wherever we finally decide to rest for a little while, they'll understand and they'll support us. And it might be true. But why are we shitting all over each other when it comes to the markets? Look, it's funny. Like, Detroit got announced, was it earlier this week or the week before? It had been rumored for a long time. It's Hockey Town, and they had supported, the tour, all the times that they got the tour game. I always forget this. It's not the rivalry tour. That was the barnstorming thing that the PWHPA did. It doesn't matter. Detroit supported this a bunch of times. And so that's cool. And I'm not shocked. And I don't think anybody's overly pissed that Detroit got a team. But the surprise seemed to come from Hamilton. And look, it's fun to make fun of Hamilton, right? It's that city in Ontario. But I don't have any doubt that Hamilton can support a team in the PWHL. But I believe that about a lot of communities. I believe that about Calgary and Edmonton. I believe that about Halifax. I believe it about San Jose and Chicago and Washington and Denver, we've heard. Vegas, we've heard. And I don't know where all of these are going to land. It sounds like while Detroit has been confirmed, at the time that I'm recording this, Hamilton isn't totally confirmed, but is basically locked in. San Jose isn't totally confirmed, but is locked in. So there's some room for some things to change. There's a lot of moving parts here. I've heard Vegas. I'm less sold. Like, it easily could be, but it seems to be a little less locked in than San Jose and Hamilton. We'll see where this is all going to shake loose. But I don't really understand. And it reminds me of something I said earlier in the show, the snark, which takes me back to one of my favorite all-time TV shows. Will McAvoy, the main character, uses the term snark. And somebody's like, what's snark? That's not even a word. He's like, snark is the idiot's version of wit, and we're being polluted by it. And just think of how many tweets or articles or Facebook posts you've read. Just like, imagine not to... And sorry, I got to tee that up, right? That's my snark voice. That's my Twitter idiot voice. Imagine not choosing my town. Like, do you have a point? Like, do you what happened in your town that means you were written off, right? That you were unfairly maligned? Did you outsell one of the other previous markets? Like, one of the tweets that I saw make the rounds towards the end of last week was that, sure, why would you choose a city where a bunch of people actually want the teams? And that's shit. You come off like a petulant teenage child on TikTok. And I'm sorry to everybody who's a grown-ass adult on TikTok. I don't use it, and so that's where I dump my fake outrage. It's the one social media platform I don't use, so it must be where the childish people are, right? But it's a childish argument. If you're standing there in Halifax and you're disappointed that the PWHL didn't land there, that's a reasonable position to hold. It's a good hockey town. I'm a Canadian guy. I'd like to see another team on this side of the border. I guess Hamilton counts. You get to be mad that it isn't your team. But to go, well, we actually wanted a team and you put it in a city where nobody cares. Are you sure about that? Detroit's hockey town. They care. San Jose, despite not being close to the largest market in the WNBA, and yes, we're now talking basketball, but we're staying in women's sports, led attendance in the WNBA last year. People care. People will support women's sports there. You get to be disappointed that there is no team coming to your market this time that we know of. We haven't heard what the fourth stop is going to be. We haven't heard that half of these are locked in. But I swear, when you come out and you just go, oh, we care and they don't care and they get a team, yeah, I'm done. I'm out. I don't even want to hear your argument. These are good markets. The PWHL isn't stupid. They're going at this more aggressively and faster than I want them to, but it's not baseless. It's not without business strategy. They have taken a calculated risk that you and me here in Ottawa or in Toronto cheering on the Scepters or in Boston cheering on the Fleet are hardcore enough that we showed up on day one. We bought hoodies. We bought jerseys. We bought the Tragically Hip toque when it came out. I like that. It's my first purple. Anyway, we're in. And they are taking advantage of that to a certain degree to go, these are our fans. We might be abusing them a little, and you are, and it's more than a little, but that they'll put up with it. And we probably will. But it doesn't mean that the PWHL has decided, fuck Halifax. It doesn't mean that the PWHL has decided, fuck Quebec City or Calgary or Edmonton. They're spreading this out. You may or may not yet get your team. You get to be disappointed. It's awesome that you're this passionate about it. I am stunned still to this day in May 2026 that Ottawa got one of the first franchises. And I have been proven wrong. Like, I'm not stunned because I think Ottawa's a shitty hockey town. I just think it's a small enough market. I didn't think they'd be in that first batch of the original 6. And by all accounts, it was Gary Bettman. Fuck you, Gary. Who said, hey, you should go to Ottawa early. And they took that seriously. And Ottawa has made them correct at every turn. So they've done their research here. San Jose is going to work. Detroit's going to work. Hamilton is going to work. Ask people in Hamilton if they have the choice between their own team or driving into downtown Toronto all the way to Coca-Cola Coliseum to watch a Toronto team, what they'd rather have. They will support this. This will work. So it bugs me a little. And clearly, if I'm spending this much time on it on the Monday edition of the podcast, it bugs me more than a little to know that there's a significant portion of fans in other markets that can't pause at, fuck, I wish that was us, and have to go to, fuck, they suck, they won't support it, it should have been us. It's a step too far, man. You're overshooting it. These are good. The only one that I have any question about at all is Vegas. But it's another very successful WNBA market, and there's no way of arguing that the Golden Knights haven't been successful down there. So you have a population that will support women's sports and that will support hockey. It's not crazy to think those will cross over and work fine in Vegas. Would it have been my first choice? No. But doesn't mean it won't work. San Jose is the one I can't believe we're arguing about at all. The turnout that they have for women's sports in Northern California is incredible. Like this, there's no doubt in my mind that's going to work. How bad have the San Jose Sharks been for how long? And people still keep showing up. You want to cross that over with their WNBA attendance? It's going to work in San Jose. It is. So I guess I'm probably beating a bit of a dead horse, but it's one thing to be disappointed that your market wasn't chosen, but man, it comes off as incredibly childish to go, no, we actually would have supported it and you chose a market that won't. I think that other market probably will. It's cool to be disappointed. It's childish to be snarky. Like I said, today's episode, perhaps more than anything else, just venting on some stuff that I don't know if anybody else cares about, so you, good listener, are subjected to it. Like, I don't know how bad I needed to sit down and argue with Bunda about all of that when he's back in here on Tuesday. And we've got some other interesting things here lined up over the next couple weeks. Tom Harrington, formerly of the CBC, traveled the world doing World Cups and Olympics and stuff. I'm curious to talk to him ahead of Toronto hosting a World Cup here and the preparations for that. Julian McKenzie, after the long weekend, will be back in here again. That's going to be fun. Love talking to that guy. We'll do kind of a season wrap-up with him. He tends to take off over the summer and do very exciting things that don't seem relaxing to me at all after a busy hockey season. But he's still young and energetic, where I'm the opposite of those things. But that'll be fun to catch up with him as well. So stick around. Lots, as always, coming up on the Tall Can Audio podcast. Subscribe wherever you're hearing us right now. Follow along on social media at Tall Can Audio. My name is Matt Robinson. Have yourselves a great